Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I would like to welcome all our viewers and students from across the world for our webinar today, Blockchains and Metaverse, an Islamic Perspective. Now, we have words like NFT and Metaverse, which are booming in the industry right now. The NFT markets themselves are booming and we are minting millionaires overnight. Is it all hype? Or is there a much stronger technology underneath all of this? What about the metaverse? Can we buy land there? What about having our personas inside the metaverse? We have so many questions coming up in our network and in our discussions on a daily basis. To what extent are these activities halal or Sharia compliant? So today's webinar, inshallah, we hope we are going to get a good clarity of the metaverse and the blockchain from our esteemed speakers. So today's webinar will comprise of two presentations from our two very dear guests who are renowned experts in their respective fields. We have with us Mufti Faraz Adam from Amana Advisors from the United Kingdom and Associate Professor Yuliani Lestari from the School of Business and Management from the Institute Technology Bandung. Today's webinar is brought to you by IBF Net Group in collaboration with Indonesia's prestigious ITB University. Established in 1959, the university is an institution of higher learning for science, technology, and fine arts with a mission of education, research, and service to the community. So it's a great pleasure for us to collaborate with them. And IBF Net is a group of companies in Ireland, Singapore, and Malaysia to develop and host multiple blockchain platforms and use cases and to build a miniature Islamic economy focusing on philanthropy, not-for-profit, and for-profit segments, aiming to convert your traditional contracts into smart contracts using the Algorand protocol. So to kickstart today's event, I would like to invite the Vice Dean for Academic Affairs, Professor Dr. Auric Gustomo, to open today's event and share a few words with us. Auric, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Zaid. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully, all of you doing well today. I'm delighted that we are able to gather here for the Blockchain and Metaverse Islamic Perspective webinar. A collaboration between IBF Net and IBF Center for Islamic Business and Finance, School of Business and Management ITB. This webinar aims to discuss blockchain technology update and metaverse in Islamic perspective. First of all, on behalf of our Dean, School of Business and Management ITB, Prof. Utomo Sarjona Putra, I wish to express our sincerest gratitude and appreciation to Mr. Muhammad Alim, CEO, IBF Net Group, and also Mr. Mufti Faraz Adam and Bu Yuliani Dwi Lestari PhD for gracing our webinar. Thank you also for everyone here for participating and attending our event, which is essential to industry player as blockchain and metaverse has been lined up on how innovation and emerging technology would impact us and prepare us in the future and how it view in Islamic perspective. Before the webinar begins, I'm happy to let you know that our school, SBM ITB, has been accredited by International Business School Accreditation, ACSB. ACSB is an association accrediting business school founded in 1916 and now is available in 100 countries. ACSB connects students, teachers, and business people globally. It applies high standard in accrediting business school. Hence, only a few schools obtain this accreditation. A total of 890 institutions in 58 countries have received accreditation from the EACSB. The EACSB accredit business school with proven excellence in teaching, research, curriculum development, and student learning. We are proud, and it is an honor for SBM ITB to have the accreditation from EACSB. EACSB hope SBM ITB hope to collaborate with other business schools worldwide to innovate and positively impact Indonesian and global society. The accreditation encourages the school to have international collaboration. I believe this international webinar is part of an effort taken by SBM ITB to have international recognition. My appreciation goes to CIBF, SBM ITB, and IBF Net for organizing this event. Ladies and gentlemen, theme of today's webinar has been designed to showcase the current development in the blockchain and metaverse industry, particularly in Islamic perspective. This event is expected to facilitate entrepreneurship and knowledge sharing. Blockchain is a pillar of 4.0 comparable to technologies such as the Internet of Things that trigger previous industry revolution. Blockchain indeed has the power to disrupt existing economics and business model and may prove particularly valuable in emerging market economies. It can be used for cryptocurrency including Bitcoin and many others such as supply chain, digital identity, healthcare, supply chain, and financial services. Moreover, cryptocurrencies has received significant attention in recent years. However, there is still less discussion about position of blockchains and other digital products, including Metaverse and NFT in the perspective of Islam, whether it is halal or not halal. For example, in Indonesia, the National Ulama Council or MUI, Majelis Ulama Indonesia, has deemed cryptocurrency as haram or bans as it has element of uncertainty, wagering and harm. But there are many types of cryptocurrency. Are all the crypto are haram, or there are some crypto that are comply with the Sharia principle. This is a very intensive discussion nowadays. Another example is that the application of blockchain technology for Islamic social finance, such as wakaf, would be another innovation in the context of Islamic economics. Many other innovations may be emerge in the future as a product of digital technology. I do believe that all prominent speakers of this webinar will give us enlightenment how digital technology can be used to develop Islamic economics to the betterment of society. Hope you enjoy this webinar. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Dr. Arik, for sharing those kind words of encouragement to all our attendees today. Moving forward, I would like to now invite the CEO of IBF Net, Muhammad Ali, to also share a few words with us. Inshallah. Ali, floor is all yours.
Right. Thank you, Zahid. So, Honorable Vice Dean, heads of department, members from academia, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, and a very good afternoon to all of you. Now, it is a pleasure for me to welcome you all to this event, which signifies the beginning of a cooperation between IBF Net Group and the esteemed ITB University. We immensely value this partnership as we aim to build a community of students, researchers, and professionals exposed to the applications of emerging technologies like blockchain and AI in various areas of the economy. We are specifically focused on the Algorand blockchain technology as we find this to be the technology of the future. It is scalable, secure, and decentralized, and comes from some of the finest minds from MIT. Now, unlike some leading blockchain technologies, Algorand actually always maintains a carbon negative footprint and contributes positively to the environment. As some of you may be aware, IBF Net Group has already introduced a few certification programs in blockchain technology and its application in Islamic business and finance sectors. It has also introduced platforms and is working on a few more as part of its mother project to build a miniature Islamic economy on the blockchain. I invite all of you to sign up with us as members and benefit from the services in a number of ways. You may visit ibfnet.ie and sign up there. Now, as part of our partnership with ITB University, we look forward to undertaking joint research studies offer training courses, organize webinars and forums at regular intervals, build, incentivize, and maintain a campus community for various programs and activities. With today's webinar, a beginning has been made in this regard. On behalf of IBF Net Group, I once again welcome everyone to this webinar, which has presentations on two very important topics by very well-known experts. I look forward to some useful webinars, research forums, training programs, and discussion events in the near future, inshallah. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alim, for that. So before we get started, a few quick house rules. So a reminder for all our participants. As a special token of appreciation, as we mentioned, that everyone who has registered with us today for the webinar, they will receive IBF tokens that power the IBF network exchange. So all the further details on how these tokens can be used or they can be redeemed, they'll be emailed to you soon. And for the ones who are joining our webinar directly, we'll be sharing a link towards the end where you can send us your email, and then we'll add you into the system as well. And during the talk, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat box below. And once our speakers are done with their presentation, we will pass on the questions to them, inshallah. So our first speaker for today, Mufti Faraz Adam, of course, he needs no introduction. He is a well-known UK-based Islamic finance and fintech consultant and heads the global Sharia advisory firm, Amana Advisors. Sheikh has a long list of accolades to his name and has been the go-to name for guidance when it comes to everything blockchain and crypto. So without taking much more of time, I would like to invite Mufti Faraz to please take the stage for our first presentation for the day, titled Sharia Perspectives on NFTs and the Metaverse. Sheikh, the floor is all yours.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much. It's an honor and a privilege to be with you all here today. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm beginning in the name of Allah, the most kind and the most merciful. Hopefully all of you can see my screen. As you can see very clearly, it says Sharia-based discussion on metaverses and NFTs, right? So the plan is I will present for 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes, and then we'll open up the floor for some questions, and let's see how we can engage with those questions. The discussion where we are at right now with metaverses is where we were with Bitcoin in 2016, 2017, meaning the journey with metaverse is just beginning for us. And as Muslims, we need to have a very proactive approach to technology, I believe, not a reactive. We're very much reactive, where all the research is done and everything, and then we start issuing fatwas, research, and all these things. Rather, we should be co-creating. We should be part of the journey of creating the latest tech, understanding how can we better our own utility, our own benefits, our own education, our own growth and development. And so this is why we need to, at the very infancy of such technologies, understand them, embrace them, see what we can gain from them, enhance them, add value to them, and grow the ecosystem. And that's really, I believe, what this forum is about. Let's engage with metaverse. Let's see what's there. How can that add value to our lives, to our existence, to our education, to our spiritual side, to our inspirational side? And then let's grow as a community, and let's add value to the world, because we have all the tools in Islam to add value to people. Honestly, that's what Islam is all about. It's about adding value in life. So I just want to really talk about these two aspects, which I believe have many layers of value, but we really just need to peel each layer and understand it deeper. Right? So the first question which really comes about is, when we speak about NFT metaverses, what is the metaverse? And I use the word plural metaverses because there is no one metaverse. That's what we all need to understand. Today, the world or the way things are being created for the metaverse, it can be created by corporations like Facebook, Microsoft. They're leading their own projects to develop their own metaverse. And there's also decentralized platforms. So if, for example, if you go on OpenSea and these platforms, you'll see multiple virtual worlds listed where people are creating their own thing and their own, you could say, shared spaces. So just to understand, there's no one metaverse. You can think of it as multiple planets. Any company, big corporation can launch their own metaverse, or a decentralized platform allows people to develop themselves what they want to do, and others can join in. So there's no real ownership. Yes, I believe there will come a time when all of this converges, because it's all about survival of the fittest. Whichever metaverse provides the most utility and benefit, efficiency will of course in the end surpass and consume the other metaverses. So that's what, when we talk about metaverses in general, is to understand that. And then what is the metaverse? Well, the metaverse, as you can see on your screen, there's many ways to describe this. If you were to call it cyberspace, you wouldn't be very far off from the description of a metaverse, right? Or it's a virtual environment, a shared space, a virtual economy. That's what it is at present. It's just a space where people can develop a digital or virtual economy. Everything that's required in an economy, the potential building blocks are there to develop that in the metaverse. So for example, you can start developing digital infrastructure, digital lands, digital places, digital markets, right? There'll be digital participants in that market. Hence, there'll be digital buyers, digital sellers, okay? So you're already creating a virtual economy. Now, what that does is, where's the incentive in doing all of this? Well, the incentive for people to come on the metaverse is this, that it allows a new kind of decentralized digital asset to be built, owned, and monetized. Look, human beings, we are naturally very incentive focused, right? That's why did the neoclassical economists were always talking about how humans are have the self-interest. They just want to maximize their own utility, right? And there's some truth to that. Like in the Quran, Allah tells us that human beings have been embedded with a natural desire and greed. So a level of natural and self-interest is good. If we never had self-interest, we wouldn't wake up to do anything, right? We wouldn't go to work. But when is self-interest problematic? It's when you're infringing the rights of others, when you are violating the principles of Sharia. So there's a barrier and framework. Okay, so we have to be incentivized, and the metaverse creates an incentivized platform for people to trade digital assets, for people to build, to monetize, to market. And of course, that's just one side of the economy. There's also the side of socializing. What's happening is, and I think COVID has really spiked this movement towards embracing technology, right? Where, because we've been isolating, and everybody's been kept within their homes, we've found a new way to interact, to socialize. And socializing is a human need. Hence, Allah created Adam alayhi salam and Hawa, right? Alayhi salam in Jannah. It's like a social need. The very first man being created was created in a pair, right? Allah created human beings in a pair. So it's natural and normal to need companionship. It's a human trait. So socializing is also part of that. And there's, of course, principles to govern all of this. So the metaverse then is really, you could say, a digital reflection of the real world. Right? If we were to put it in a very simple language, where what the metaverse is trying to do, the metaverse is trying to replicate and reflect an experience which people have in the real world, but in a digital sense. That's the objective behind the metaverse. So you can, for example, just like how you go shopping, just like how you have producers and consumers in the real world and different economic agents in the real world, that will be reflected in the metaverse. Just like how you have property in the real world, that'll be reflected in the metaverse. Just like how you have social events, you have goods that you want in the real world, that'll be reflected in the metaverse. So that's the objective and the goal behind the metaverse. And that really just breaks it down to you and gives you a holistic picture, at a very simple sense, what the metaverse is all about. Of course, there's a lot of technology and tech behind the metaverse. For example, augmented reality, virtual reality, cloud infrastructure. All these are the forefront of big data, data analytics. All of these new tech that's part of the latest fintech wave is really pushing the metaverse to its limits, right? And this is just the beginning. Right now, for example, if you want to go into the metaverse, you can do it through a desktop, right? So if you go on Decentraland or Roblox, or if you go into just check out Facebook Horizon or any of these types of platforms, you're either on your desktop or you're using a headset, an Oracle 2 headset, or a VR headset. That's what. So it's very bulky to engage. Desktop isn't the best experience. We're not there yet where you can see things without wearing anything. Right? We're not at that level. Neither are we at that stage where you can wear a pair of glasses and see everything and have augmented reality. The tech is being developed, but there's still a lot of time to get to there. So some of the properties of the metaverse from a tech perspective, and just from a kind of like experience perspective, it's massively scaled. It's not like your Second Life. Those of you who remember Second Life, this digital platform which allowed you to socialize, which had multiple glitches, tech glitches. It's not always the smoothest experience. It was something done at a time to allow us to, I would say, just experience that notion of having a digital world. So it was the very starter and early developers in this space. Metaverse number 2, it's real-time rendered. That's the speed that we have now. It's phenomenal, right? So it's almost everything happening is almost real time with the world. So there's continuous syncing with what's happening around you. It's a 3D virtual world. It's not a 2D experience anymore. In fact, there's even 4D tech being created to be implemented with the metaverse. It's synchronous and persistent. So those kind of glitches and all those things have been smoothened out. And in fact, it's syncing continuously with ownership records and with other data sets. So in that way, things are being kept up to date. And I would say one of the greatest things is the unlimited number of users, where you can now have an experience where there's multiple millions of users in real time exchanging value, or at least socializing, exchanging, interacting. So you're creating a marketplace which would have a lot of liquidity in a digital sense, right? So that's I would say, some of the highlights of the metaverse from a tech perspective. Just 2 case studies to give you some kind of like real life context to what we're talking about. So there's Decentraland, which is one of the well-known metaverses out there, right? And what is it? It's a 3D virtual world, browser-based platform. What can you do on there? You can buy virtual plots of land and everything. And of course, what powers all of that is a crypto asset, right? So it uses a crypto asset to power interactions, transactions on this metaverse. So that's more to do with building development in a virtual world, right? But that's just an idea that people had. That it feels good. What have they kind of capitalized on? The feel-good factor of owning things that humans we like to own. It's a feeling that we have within us. Now, we might not have the resources to own in real life, but if you can own something in a virtual world, it makes you feel good. And so I would say there's an element of preying on this sense of human vulnerabilities in that as well, right? Which we can talk about later on, the utility and value case and use case in these things. But that's one example. The second example is Roblox, which is more of a gaming platform where people can come, there's games there, you can create your own games, others can come. So it's a shared virtual space being seen continuously, multiple users, and you can create your own thing. And that's really, the metaverse then an extension of the internet. What you could do on the internet by yourself, the metaverse allows you to do that in a decentralized base, with millions of people, which you could do on the internet really as well. But I would say the experience is far greater and enhanced than what we have currently on the internet that we know. And of course, all of this lives on the internet, but it's an extended space of the internet. And the latest, you could say, iteration of the power and capability of the internet. Now let's look at it from a Sharia perspective, which is key, I think, and that's where my expertise come in. And these are just broad, I would say, reflections when considering structuring a metaverse which is Sharia compliant. Like, will we see a metaverse developed? And the race has started. That let's see who creates the first kind of like space which is compliant with Sharia, or at least is Sharia based and has the values that we want it's a safe space. It's a value-adding space. There's valuable interactions, valuable use cases, as things of real benefit. And that's really the point number one here. That from a Sharia perspective, everything is about utility, right? Sharia is about utility. The entire Sharia, that's why the great scholars like Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, Ibn Abdus Salam, Ash-Shatibi, when they write on Maqasid al-Sharia, they very clearly, when they open the discussions, the first thing they mention is about how Sharia is all about benefit and utility. It's all based on this idea and this principle of giving value to people and removing things which take away value from people, right? So anything which adds utility and value, it's a positive, it's a plus. Anything which takes away, which doesn't really add value, it's a negative thing. It should be removed. It shouldn't be part of our lives. And that's really the crux of everything. And so when we talk about NFTs, when we talk about Metaverse, anything we talk about, we have to always keep in mind it's all about value adding. It's not about just purely experiencing or financial. If something is worth £1 million or £1 billion, it doesn't mean it has utility in a Sharia sense, right? It doesn't mean that. So you have, all kinds of we know in the global financial crisis in 2008, that some of the instruments, these credit default swaps, mortgage-backed securities, were worth millions, billions, right? So they had a financial value. Well, financial value does not correlate to Sharia value. And that's two different concepts. Just because something has a price tag, it doesn't make it something which is value adding. And that's very key for us to understand. So it's all about utility. Utility in what sense? Is it adding something to you, a real benefit to you in this world, or to your hereafter, or to both? If something is not benefiting us in this world, has no benefit whatsoever, rather there's an opportunity cost to it, and we're losing out, right? And it's just, aimless, unpredictable, futile activity, then from a Sharia perspective, we should avoid that altogether. Because Sharia has given us very clear objectives, where we have a limited, finite resource, which is time, right? We have a destination to go to, right, in the afterlife, in the next life, and therefore, no sane or reasonable person would waste the finite resource, something which is scarce, on something which is futile. And that's just purely an economic decision that we need to make. And of course, humans are not rational, as economics says, right? We're very irrational. We're very emotional beings. But that's the reality. We have to think about this very proactively and productively. So number one is utility. Second is real and virtual. What I mean by that is we need to consider, is our engagement with a virtual space impacting our real life obligations, whether that's Islamic obligations, whether that's social obligations, and any other obligation or commitment that we have. It shouldn't be that we're spending so much time in a metaverse and we become accustomed to sitting on the sofa, the couch, or sleeping in bed all day and not doing anything else. So this is very much engaging for the mind, but is that healthy overall? That's a balance that needs to be looked at, and we need to ask the experts when it comes to health. Now, how healthy is it? What should be the kind of limit to this? And then, of course, when going to design, number 3 is when creating a metaverse, everything which is not Sharia compliant in the world will not be Sharia compliant in the metaverse, of course. So you can't have concerts, right, in designing, and of course, where your avatars, the way your avatars are designed, right? Having avatars which are very revealing, immodest avatars, it's problematic. Having designs of things which are not Sharia compliant in the world, in the metaverse, will be problematic. Experiences, as I just mentioned, in concerts. So having like a rave and crazy parties, things which are, or even a nightclub kind of experience in the metaverse will not be Sharia compliant. Having like a bar in the metaverse, although you're not drinking alcohol, but you're creating this experience, we should avoid those things because it's not a value add. Rather, you should create value adding experiences. So this is something to consider. which experiences are value adding from a Sharia perspective and which experiences are negative from a Sharia perspective that should be removed from any Sharia-based metaverse. Then trading. Everything that we know about the principles of Sharia when it comes to trading will be central to any digital economy or market in a metaverse. So what you can trade, what you can't trade, goods, the way contracts are done, the way rights are protected and preserved, all these things will have to be implemented in a metaverse. So this, I'm just giving you like a map and some reflections on what a metaverse should consider. At the heart of everything, I believe, is utility. That's the core. It must be something which really adds value. It's not just a craze, a hype, or something which is purely to make money and monetize from. Because remember, so you may be able to monetize on something, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's something which is sanctioned in Sharia. Not everything which is monetized in the world is something which adds value from a Sharia perspective, and therefore it's not permissible. Right? So that was really everything to do with the metaverse, and we parked the discussion there. Questions, will take questions as I finish in a couple of minutes. Now let's focus on something more specific, which is NFTs, which stands for non-fungible tokens, right? Everybody knows what NFT stands for. It's something which we've all been now hearing across the world. And really, just to put some context to it, when we talk about an NFT, right, you can think of it as a blockchain-based certificate. It's really that, right? You're owning a token which has data. And now that data can be information, the metadata, there could be information to a particular website, to a link. It could be some kind of address there. It could be anything, right? Typically, an NFT is linked to an underlying asset, right? So there's an underlying asset which the NFT represents. And so whilst the asset is typically not within an NFT, so an NFT is not holding the asset, the NFT is linking you to an asset. That asset is held in a repository, right? There's famous repositories in the world now which hold a digital asset. It can be that an NFT is not only holding a digital asset or a key to a physical artwork, it might just be a license. It could be a license or something of that nature, a record. And that's where NFTs become really valuable, that you can create a system of record keeping, potentially much more secure. Yes, there have been recent issues with NFTs, hacking, proving ownership, because look, if everything is being stored off chain on a website and something goes wrong with the website, right? And that's where your assets were held and kept, the NFT becomes worthless and useless. So there's a need for greater governance, cybersecurity, and the other elements which makes this ecosystem operate. And those are, I would say, extrinsic discussions which need to have, and the respective kind of experts in those fields need to address. But nevertheless, NFTs then are this link and connection. It's a certificate to something else, right? And then from a Sharia perspective, and when looking at it more to categorize an NFT, how do we then look at it? How do we deal with it? Then I've categorized NFTs in two ways in my own research on NFTs, just to simplify as much as possible, because when trading NFTs and buying an NFT does not always give you and grant you proprietary rights, such as copyright of the underlying asset. So it might be linked to an asset which is off-chain, or it might be on a website or even on a blockchain. Very rarely it's on a blockchain, but if it's a file which can fit onto a blockchain, depending on the size, then the NFT is not the asset itself. The NFT is different, the asset is different. When that's the case, then we have to keep in mind that what is the relationship between the NFT and the asset? Does the owner of an NFT gain full rights, ownership rights? Because what is ownership from a Sharia perspective and from a legal perspective? Ownership is just a set of rights. Ownership is just a set of rights. Rights to disposal, rights to claim, rights to use, rights to benefit. Right? So ownership creates multiple rights. just like how we see in the Islamic finance world and sukuk structuring and trust law, where you have beneficial ownership and legal title being separated, and then it's a discussion of multiple rights, or you see freehold and leasehold in leasing discussions, right? From a finance perspective, it's a similar kind of concept here, whereby you can have an NFT traded and transacted, which transfers all rights to the buyer of an NFT. In that case, whoever owns the NFT owns the underlying asset. It's almost as if we're now talking about securitization and sukuk to some degree, but this is tokenization to another level because the underlying asset is non-fungible. Okay, so it's very similar to securitization, and therefore we are venturing into the whole area and space of tokenization. So one experience is where trading an NFT transfers all rights of the underlying. Okay, that's very straightforward, which means that if you're buying the NFT, you are buying the underlying asset, as long as you have ownership and access rights for possession to materialize. Because this NFT will represent possession, it'll give you the link and the data to access your asset, whether the asset is a digital asset or not. And of course, there's an entire discussion on what makes a digital asset a valid asset from a Sharia perspective. And I've written an entire article on this. You can go on my website and read further on an article I've just written and published recently on real assets, financial assets, and digital assets. How, regardless of the form, Sharia is not concerned with the form. And that's the beauty of Sharia, right? If Sharia was, prohibitive or prescriptive, that you can only trade or buy and sell real assets, then we'd be in difficulty because the world has moved on, right? Financial assets and digital assets are the norm now. What we buy and trade online, when you buy shares, you're not buying a real asset. You're buying a financial instrument, a financial asset, the equity that you're trading. Yes, it's linked, and there's principles behind what makes financial assets Sharia compliant, what makes digital assets Sharia compliant. But the Sharia is not fixated on the form of things. And this is what we need to understand. Sharia looks deeper. Sharia is very deep, and a superficial reading of Sharia can be misleading for people. If we don't study and read deeper and contemplate and ponder and reflect, then we can very easily get the wrong end of things and misunderstand things. So one is trading the NFT with its rights. The second is the buyer or the trader does not receive proprietary rights of the underlying asset. And in that scenario, then what are you trading? What are you buying? It all comes down to the smart contract and the terms and conditions on the platform that you're trading. As I mentioned, a few points here. The terms and conditions, that they determine who owns, what access do you have, resale rights, and royalties. Right? Royalties is another key area when it comes to NFTs because that's where a lot of the money is being made. And of course, in auctions, but royalties is another area. From a Sharia perspective, you should have some kind of ownership right to gain royalty. For you to gain royalties without any rights whatsoever to an asset which is being sold downstream would be problematic because you have no connection and contact with that. You are just enforcing yourself on that item. Yes, if you have copyright, that's fine because you have an element attached to the asset which you're earning in lieu of. Sharia, again, is very fair, very equitable, and very beautiful, where I can't gain something if I don't have any skin in the game. If I have no involvement with an asset, it's not permissible for me to gain because I've not added anything. There's no input from my side, right? And this mirrors the concept of value-added tax that we have, VAT. Value-added tax, right? Because value is being added at each junction and is being sold on. So just like how labor is an input and the factors of production that we talk about in economics, land, labor, enterprise, right? And capital, it's all about adding value. If I have no input in any asset downstream, how can I gain any benefit from it? I can't. That's beyond my reach. And that'll be unlawfully just earning a revenue stream from something I have no input in anymore. So that's something to also consider, right? And then finally, I would say the last couple of slides I just want to mention is when we talk about NFTs, we need to be very clear about the type of NFT that we're dealing with. When it comes to art, the art should be Sharia compliant, of course. Collectibles, it should be something which is valuable in Sharia. It can't be something which is like useless. In-game items. When it comes to gaming, I have a lot of thoughts on gaming and really where the world is going and the kind of games that we're seeing and the type of games that we should be creating. There's a lot of research done on gaming, which is not beneficial for children, all types of games. So for example, violent games with violence, vulgar speech, language, games with scenes which are immodest, right? This is not value adding. And games that are just purely a waste of time. Yes, for children, there's of course much more concession in gaming and doing things because they're children. Right? It's typically what children do. They play games, activities, and these things. But when it comes to adults, a 30-year-old or 40-year-old, just playing games all day, then and the type of games that 40, 30-year-old plays has no real value in life, then that's a cause of concern. It's not good for his health, good for his mind, or good for productivity. And from a Sharia perspective, there's definitely encouragement to use our time more productively and in more, you could say, value-adding experiences. Number three, the fourth one is license and tickets. NFTs can be used for licensing and ticketing. Then again, it goes down to considering what the license is for, what the ticket is for. The NFT, for it to be Sharia compliant, the experience and the ticket should be giving you access to something which is lawful to attend. Likewise with media and digital records. So there has to be a full Sharia screening of NFTs on this. Alhamdulillah, I'm working right now with a NFT marketplace and platform in the United Kingdom. And this is what we're trying to develop and build, a very comprehensive, thorough Sharia screening of NFTs, because it's very important that we get it right. And look, I want to make a disclaimer here. We won't have all the answers right now. And this is very important to understand and acknowledge and be humble about and accept and acknowledge, because this requires co-creation. The entire space, we won't have all the answers right now. But what we can't do is afford to just sit, wait for 10 years to pass and then start developing answers. Because if we wait for another 10 years, the world will have moved on. NFTs will be a discussion of yesterday. Same thing, look, people are debating about crypto assets, cryptocurrencies. The world has moved on from that discussion. The debate about crypto assets, cryptocurrencies was something done in the last decade, really. This decade now is about things like Metaverse, NFTs, and things will go. This is going to be a one-year discussion. Next year, this will not be a discussion anymore. There'll be a new technology and a new issue being created. That doesn't mean, of course, we be hasty. No, but it means we should be very proactive. That we should always be ahead in the research, ahead of the game, ahead of the curve, in looking at the latest technology, in using our minds, being very clear. There's no need to issue fatwas. Rather, it's a fiqh sandbox, right? That's how you have regulatory sandboxes to test technology, test startups. We need to create a space where we can have a sandbox to test ideas, right? Have some safeguards from a Sharia perspective, minimal safeguards, allow users to be free to innovate, to test. And that will really help innovation, understanding, and regulation. What we can't do is just see things from a distance and then issue our own views on things, because that then, we've lost the point. We've not had any real understanding. With experience, you have to have experience with this and knowledge to really build valuable information and credible information, right? And reliable information. And this is just to summarize, look, NFT should add value. And this goes down to anything really, and especially in the digital world, the metaverse. It's all about value adding. If it doesn't add value, then avoid it. From a Sharia perspective, it'll be discouraged. So it should be either educational, spiritual, inspirational, motivational, or some value add in your culture and society, right? Within a Sharia framework. And that's what I would like to really end my presentation with. Thank you very much. And I hope that was of use and benefit to you. And now I'm more than happy to take some questions on everything that's been said.
Thank you, Mufti Faraz, for that enlightening session. I think we have quite a few questions coming in. So I'll start with a few of them. Just give me a minute. Right, so the first question that we have is, with regards to the cryptos itself. As we know, wash trades are essentially trades that cancel each other out and have no commercial value. So in crypto markets, also we have seen wash trades being used to generate fake volumes to pump up the prices of crypto tokens. However, a justification for this is often provided that this is not an example of market manipulation, but rather market making, and which is essential to protect the interest of token holders. And without doing such a thing, to support the prices of the tokens may fall flat, harming all token holders. Another justification people would give for doing such practices is that high volumes are a precondition to listing on large centralized exchanges. So, do these kind of reasons stand the test of Sharia? Do we call such practices haram or halal?
It's a very, very good question. From a Sharia perspective, there's multiple layers of governance and regulation, right? We have a very clear framework at the top level, high level, like do's and don'ts you have. For example, you can't involve in riba, you can't do this, you can't do that. There's a second layer of governance, which is practices which are misrepresentation, manipulation, deception, these types of principles, which are not really, you can't quantify, rather it's more descriptive, right? It's not something which is like a yes or no, it just depends on what's actually happening. We have multiple examples in the Sharia whereby market manipulation is prohibited, right? Market manipulation is discouraged, prohibited, makruh, right? Scholars clearly mention. So for example, the idea of intercepting caravans or imports and then selling them in the cities, right? This is an example in Sharia that if there's a city and there's an interceptor, somebody who goes out, intercepts these caravans and imports and then manipulates the price, right? And he earns a spread and with the intention to harm, that's prohibited, right? That's discouraged because now he's manipulating the supply chain. The famous hadith we all know about tas'ir, which is price fixing. Why did the Messenger of Allah not favor tas'ir? And why is price fixing, having like a command economy in Sharia, not encouraged at all? Islam doesn't promote a command economy. And beautifully, Islam really goes for like a mixed economy, right? That's what it is. There is some government participation. Of course, there'll always be, right? We have some state influx and we have some private and public. But having a centrally planned central command economy is not something favored in Sharia because it's manipulation. The government will manipulate and artificially impact. No entity in this world is able. Rather, if you do manipulation, you are now competing with God, because it's God and Allah who is the one who's let this kind of what Adam Smith called the invisible hand. It's a similar concept here, which Allah is behind the prices and price discovery. So thereby, if there's activities like manipulation, all these things in the crypto markets and wash trading, these things, and the thing is to manipulate price, artificially inflate, right? You're harming an economy here, right? You're harming, forget the investors, that's just one group. Look at the larger group of people, right? Potentially that can be impacted, or how this can be manipulated further. So these types of practices, whenever there's manipulation, there's a cause of concern, but it's very difficult to put a ruling from a Sharia. Rather, it needs to be a regulator. From a regulatory perspective, a regulator can ban this practice altogether immediately, and that's what should happen from a Sharia perspective, right? Sharia leaves governance also to people in matters which are have many variables, right? So this is one of those issues. But yeah, I would say it's not encouraged, even from my personal view. This matter is definitely discouraged because there's clear manipulation there.
Thank you so much, Mufti, for that answer. The second question we have is, should Muslims do ICOs offering utility tokens, considering that now we have easy ways to tokenize equity, STOs, where the risk is not 100% shifted to the token buyer?
Yeah, so there's two things in there when it comes to the actual type of token. See, not every project will be giving equity. So a security token might not be realistic for every project. That's why you need to consider different types of tokens. The main thing is about the token is it's the use case and the utility. What is it representing? That's a core factor of any token. And so when an ICO is being done, you have to look at what the token is representing. What is it giving you access to as utility? What benefits is it giving you? And then secondly, the question of risk shifting. then that's not a major concern from a Sharia perspective, because in any trade, risk is shifted with trades, right? When I buy something, the risk of the asset is shifted to me, 100%. I become the sole risk bearer of the asset. What's more concerning is, what am I buying? Is it just junk or not? That's the key, because then I'm completely owning nothing of value and have full risk. But if you have the upside and the risk of the downside, then that's fine from a Sharia perspective.
Jazakallah khair. A recurring question that we're getting is, how do we calculate our zakat on NFTs that we're holding? If you could give a quick summary on that.
Well, NFTs.
On the NFTs, yes.
Yeah, so for NFTs, it's a very, very good question. So, I mean, if it's an underlying, one thing is to look at the underlying asset, and then secondly is looking at the NFT, which is just a right and not a full ownership, right, of the underlying. If the underlying asset is a zakatable asset, right, then your NFT, and you have full proprietary rights of the underlying asset, your NFT will always be zakatable, right? That's quite straightforward. But if it's an asset which is not a zakatable asset, it's not something which is being traded, it's not inventory or stock, neither is gold and these types of things, and you don't have proprietary right of the underlying asset, rather you've just bought access rights, but your intention is to buy and sell this, you've bought this purely to sell on, then there'll be zakat on your NFT value, because this right has now become a inventory and stock for all business purposes, right? And so you'll be paying zakah on that. But if that's not the case, rather you've bought an NFT purely as a collectible, or,
like to hold for long time.
To hold and for the benefit of what the NFT gives you, right? Or to use it for something, then there'll be no zakah in that, because that's like any other paper which just gives you license to do something. There's no zakah in that. And that's a very, I would say, overview and summary of that.
Right. Next question we have is, several news and reports showed that the USDT is practicing fractional reserve banking. Recently, the company itself even claimed that they don't have 1:1 backing of USD. So can USDT be used to raise funds and be held in treasury or in liquidity pools?
Yeah, no, very good question here. So yeah, look, I've read some of the concerns about Tether, and also the kind of statements from the company. What I would say is there's definitely concerns there, without a doubt. I've also looked at that quite thoroughly and reviewed it. And there are concerns with the practices of the company, no doubt. But the USDT is like a product of the company, right? So there's two separate things we have to understand. One is the company. When they say it's backed, it was proven that it's not backed 1:1 to a dollar, right? There's a lot of proof to that. But the Tether now has become, and USDT is an independent asset class within itself, right? So whilst, yes, it's okay to use USDT because it's not a literal US dollar, it's just collateralized, it's just backed by just maintaining reserves as a stable coin to maintain the value and price. It's therefore pegging the price and price stability. But it's not that when you buy USDT, you're actually buying and selling the dollar. That's not the case, right? And therefore, USDT is an independent asset class within itself. It's not a digital representation of the US dollar. And therefore, we look at the value and utility, the benefits, and the screening is of USDT in and of itself. That's why it would be okay to use USDT for fund raising and all these types of things, and using as trading. But there's definitely concerns with what's happening with the company. And that's something, if there's malpractice, then we should use better digital assets that are out there.
Jazakallah khair. Sheikh, the next question is, could you elaborate further on what exactly is the utility of the metaverse for our real day-to-day life? So how do we understand utility?
Yeah, I mean, look, the real utility would be buying and selling things. Now at stores, you're getting brands, global brands, which are marketing their products on the metaverse. So it's like, instead of shopping online, like just how you shop on the internet, it'll be a similar experience, but the experience will be far more enhanced, right, on the metaverse. So it's like what we do on the internet, you'll be able to do that on the metaverse. Remember, it's just about more scale, faster, variety, color, choice, 3D. That's what we're talking about. So everything you do on the internet, you'll be able to do on the metaverse. the experience will be far more like real life, right? As opposed to looking at a 2D screen when we shop on the internet.
Jazakallah khair. Next question is it permissible to raise funds without taking any responsibility towards the promises made? This is referring to the utility token and the white papers.
So, I mean, look, if you're raising funds, and it depends on the structure that you're raising funds. If you're selling something, you have to be selling something which is, of course, valid, existing, and everything, right? If you're raising funds for like a wakala, right, which is also an instrument that has been used, where you're an agent, you're raising funds of investors and investing elsewhere, you have a fiduciary duty to your investors, right? You have a duty of care. So these are, you cannot just raise funds and have no rights to your investors. By definition, if you're fundraising, you have a duty to all your stakeholders.
The next question we have is, for cryptos to be halal, do they need to be backed by a government or authority?
It's a very good question. Look, there's different types of crypto assets. Okay, remember that. The only, I would say, discussion would be on currencies. The other types of crypto assets, whether it's governance tokens, security tokens, utility tokens, it makes no sense having government backed. If it was government backed, we'd be moving to like a centrally planned economy, right? So it can't be everything in crypto has to be government approved or planned. Yes, you need regulators which regulate the space, banning the junk, allowing that which is useful, right? But when it comes to currency, there is discussion classically. See, classically, there were scholars later on that came and said, you know what, the government should be the central body. Imam Nawawi rahimahullah discusses and others that the governing central body should be the one minting currency, right? Because again, there's chance of manipulation, fraud, and all these things, deception. And what we need is a system. Of course, in that time, the only system large enough, big enough to maintain order was the government. So it makes complete sense. If you can create a system which gives you all the benefits, securities of a government, of something large, which can handle the data, then why can't that also regulate the space? It's not about government for government's sake, rather it's what the government represented, which the scholars were keen and the economists were keen about. The ideas, the security, order. It's all about, look, governance is all about security and order. If blockchain or any technology can provide security, order, trust, transparency, right, authority, then whether it's a government or something which is digital, it makes no difference, right? And that's the key. So my personal view is it's not required. A government is not required. Rather, it can be done if we have all the same properties elsewhere.
Right. Sheikh, the next question, it's kind of a merger between both NFTs and the Metaverse. So it talks about NFTs. A lot of them are 3D sort of animals or creatures, especially in these type of NFTs, like we see the Ape Club. Are they halal? And a lot of these projects are even characters which look like real men and women. And by extension, of course, in the Metaverse, you have our own avatars which we are creating. So does this fall under imitating the creation of Allah, as in, you know?
Yeah. A very good question. Look, this is where my personal view is that this is where NFT is like a waste. There's no real value add in just, forming images of things and owning and selling in that, right? There's no real benefit in that. Yes, if there's a real art, real calligraphy, there's some kind of real digital imagery which is of value, and people, look, art is something beautiful, right? You have to understand, art is beautiful. We hang art in our walls. We take comfort from art, right? A picture paints 1,000 words. So there is benefit in art, but not all type of art is value adding. Just seeing like an ape, right, on a screen, or some kind of funny digital image, that's just like, it's just a hype, right? People are just making money of things, right? So from a Sharia perspective, we have to be very careful of that. Again, it all goes down to utility. So when it comes to these types of images, avoid these types of NFTs, which are just basic avatars, simple avatars. This is just a very childish use case right now. I think we need to be more clever and more conscious of using this technology in a more better, appropriate way.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Sheikh, the next question is also related to the Metaverse. What's your opinion with regards to buying land in the Metaverse? We've also recently heard of an Islamic center being set up in Decentraland. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, look, if it's done for, it's just all the reason why it's done, right? If it's done to promote good values, right? Promote inspiration, ideas, potentially it'd be fine, right? But if a person is wasting money buying land in a digital world, right, which is just there sitting somewhere, right, in the digital space on some kind of secure server in the world, then you might be wasting your money, right? It's not really adding value. This whole idea of gaming and just creating things online, look, we have to be very clear. Sharia has clear instructions for us to do things in our real life. The digital world is an extension. It should be adding value to our real life. That's the key thing, right? It's not that we're wasting all our resources, the world, in the digital world, which is just there. It's just it's a mental experience or visual experience at its most. It's essential experience, right? The metaverse is essential experience. And what I mean by that, you're either seeing that and feeling that, but there's no transient or tangible kind of reality to that. So you can't do so many things that you do in the world there. So when it comes to using your money, use it wisely. Yes, if you're doing it to teach, educate, inspire, motivate things, there could be room for that. But don't just go and buy 5 acres of land on a for like £1,000, which really, what value is that adding to you? That's the real question.
Right. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for that. Sheikh, the next question is with regards to NFTs. The brother says that he's an active NFT collector on the Solana blockchain. And each time a new project is announced, they need to buy the NFT through minting, either in their own website or through third-party launchpads. Now, the issue arises when we randomly buy an NFT out of, let's say, a 10K supply that we don't know the specifications and details of the metadata. And instead, we are just aware of what the project is about. So wouldn't such transactions be categorized as gharar, since we don't know the detail of the specific items that we'll be getting, but we just know about the overall project?
It has a potential to be gharar, but it just depends on the level of information, access of information, right? We would want a platform which has full transparency. Look, transparency is key as a Sharia principle, right? So we need to know the terms and conditions. We need to understand what we're buying. And whenever there's no transparency, the risk and probability of injustice, of abuse, misuse increases. And that's what Sharia is preventing. Sharia is preventing all these things of misuse, abuse, fraud, deception, and transparency, therefore, is required.
The next question is, do cryptos need to have an intrinsic value for them to be permissible?
I love the questions about intrinsic value. I think, look, the question, look, intrinsic value, the word intrinsic value, where does it come from? It's an economic term. Okay, and intrinsic value is very debatable. What is value? What is value? It's very subjective. Okay, well, I might see something as valuable, you might not see it as something valuable.
True.
So value is a very subjective term. It doesn't really add. We'll debate on what's valuable all day long, right? What we need to look at is utility and use cases. That's how we determine value. How is value derived? It's whether something has use, right? Whether you can benefit from it. And that's where the discussion should be. What use case is this thing providing you? And remember, one thing to add here, we can't compare the digital world to the real world for all intents and purposes, because the digital world has to be understood in its own right, right? What adds value to you in a digital world might not add value to you in the real world, right? So the metrics, the ideas, the principles we use to quantify value or even understand utility and use cases might not always stand true for a digital world, right? There'll be overlaps, but we have to look at each world, each domain in its own right to understand what is a use case in a digital world. And is that use case then valid with Sharia? That's what we need to consider. So I don't think intrinsic value is a right approach to looking at these things. People will argue gold has no intrinsic value as well. There's these arguments and whether it has intrinsic value. Rather, what we look at is what's the utility, use case, and the benefit of items. That's what Sharia wants as well.
I think a lot of the other questions that we're getting are a bit repetitive. So I think we can stop here for now. Inshallah. The rest of the questions, Sheikh, I think we'll forward it to you, inshallah. You can get to them later on. Sheikh, Jazakumullah khair for taking time out from your busy schedule and being here with us, sharing all the beneficial knowledge. So, on behalf of all our participants and the organizers, Jazakumullah khair for being here with us.
Jazakallah khair. It was an honor and a privilege and a pleasure. I'd like to also say salam to all the people at the university. It's a pleasure to hear about you and all the good work you're doing.
Barakallah feek, Sheikh. Assalamu alaikum.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, we are now at the second sessions of the seminars, and I'm very happy to be the moderator for the second sessions, and we are also happy you are still staying with us for the second sessions. And for the second sessions is will be delivered by Dr. Yuliani Dwilstari from our colleagues in here in SBM ITB. So we have a discussion here about Metaverse and NFTs in the first sessions, and we are now going to discuss about the applications of Bitcoin in the Islamic economics. And allow me to give a short bio from Dr. Yuliani Dwilstari. She is Associate Professor in Sustainable Operations Management, and her current research is in halal industry and sustainable concept in various sectors. And recently, she published some journals articles about halal supply chains, Islamic social finance, particularly National Wakaf Index in Indonesia, and also halal tourism. So it's a very prominent speakers in this field. So I think we are, without further ado, I will invite Dr. Yuliani. Please, time's yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pak Yudo. Can you hear my voice clearly, Pak?
Yes, very clear.
Okay. Allow me to wear this headset because in front of my home now there is a construction work. So I hope that there is no noise, yeah? Okay.
Yeah,
so yeah, okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity given to me. So today I have a chance to share material entitled Blockchain in Islamic Economy. Okay, so let me share my screen. Can you see this one? Okay, is it clear?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
We can see
All
your
right.
screen.
Yeah. So if you're doing research in blockchain, I believe that you have read a lot of materials, and my materials here will focus on the general view of blockchain. What is it? What are the general applications of blockchains in various sectors, and also current development projects that is happening in Indonesia right now. So I hope that this can provide us with a basic understanding, especially for SBM student, about blockchain in Islamic economy. When we talk about blockchains, first, of course, we need to know what is blockchains. The term blockchains, by definition, is the collections of link blocks on a peer-to-peer network where blocks are connected using cryptographic hash code, because of which there is no single point of failure. We know that in the past few years, there have been many attempts to create digital money, digital innovations also happening right now, which is in fact not always succeed. And the prevailing issue in this case is trust. Let's take an example. If someone doing direct transactions without a mediator or even formal institutions to ensure the legal aspect, for example, Indonesian people tends to be afraid that there will be scam or misuse, loss, and so on. So in our daily life, we are getting used to dealing with a very complex process. In many aspects, we need to dealing with long administrative process that is not effective and also not efficient. So blockchain in this case that is applying peer-to-peer concept by using a specific types of database called blockchains, aiming to solve this issue. And the applications of blockchain's technology are varied. Bitcoin that is mentioned by Pak Yudo previously, it is one example, well known from blockchain applications. In Bitcoin, it is a decentralized digital currency. So it works without a central bank or single administrator that can be sent from user to user on the peer-to-peer Bitcoin network without the need for intermediaries. But actually, others than that, there are other huge potentials of blockchain's applications, particularly in Islamic economic. And we will see some example later. If we can see this picture, so this is what we call as distributed ledger technology, or DLT. This is the core in the blockchain technology, where blockchain is programmable, and then it is secure, anonymous, timestamp, immutable, and also distributed. Then how does the blockchain technology works? This figure provides us with a very simple illustration. If we assume that there is end user requesting for a transactions, then the next step will be the requested transaction will be broadcast to P2P network that it might be consisting of thousands of computers in here. And then the validations and verifications process will be conducted later on. And once it is verified, the new block is added to existing blockchains, and then the transaction is complete. And if we take a look on the types of blockchain itself, there are four different types. First is public blockchains, which is opened, and it uses decentralized network of computers so that anyone who needs to validate a transactions, they can gain access to it. And then the second one is the private blockchains, which is not open. It means that it has access restrictions. Consortiums, it's a kind of hybrid. It's a combinations where at the same time, it will use centralized and also decentralized features on it. And then the last one is side chains, is a blockchain running parallel to the main chains, where it allows user to move digital assets between two different blockchains and also improve scalability and efficiency. So these are several characteristics in blockchain. So first is about decentralizations, which means that blockchains does not store any of its informations in a central locations, meaning that it will be spread across a network of computers. So, well, whenever a new block is added to the blockchains, every computer on the network updates to reflect the change. Thus, it will make it become more difficult to tamper with. And then the second one is, it is high accuracy. All transactions on the blockchain network will be approved by a network of thousands of computers. So in this case, the system removes human involvement in the verification process, where it will resulting in less human error and an accurate record of information. The third characteristic is it is efficient. Blockchain can improve from both perspective, cost and also process, to make it more efficient. So for examples, if we are talking about bank in traditional banking system, we as the customers, we need to pay a bank to verify a transaction. So that's just for example, or perhaps a notary to sign a document, and many other examples in administrative thing. But then with the usage of blockchain technology, it will eliminate the needs for the third-party verifications, and also it can eliminate other costs. If you're talking about the process itself, the transactions can take up to a few days. For example, if you want to attempt deposit a check, usually on Friday evening, then usually we can receive our fund on Monday. Again, with the blockchain technology, the transactions can be completed less than 10 minutes and it can be considered secure after just a few hours. So at the end, it will provide a more efficient process for the users. And then the fourth characteristic is private and secure, where the data recorded must be verified by the blockchain network. So thousands of computers on the blockchain rush to confirm that the details of the purchase are correct. Yeah? And then the last one is transparent. Most blockchains are entirely open source software, so in which everyone can access the code. So those are characteristics of blockchain technology that I mentioned in the previous slide. And this slide showing that if we refer to Islamic economy, then there are 4 basic principles that we need to follow. First, it has to fulfill the Sharia compliance, of course, based on Quran and also Hadith. And then it requires us prohibition of interest or riba. And then collections of zakat, wakaf, infak, sodako, and also other Islamic tax, and also prohibition of garar. So I think we have discussed about this in the previous session with Mr. Mufti Faras. Many audience asking about this issue. So I think I also agree with him, as long as what we do, it's creating added value, at the same time also avoiding what is prohibited and comply to Sharia, we are on the right track. Yeah. Okay. And then if we link blockchain technology into Islamic economy in Indonesia specifically, we already have a clear direction towards to this issue. Yeah. Where again, as long as the technology can provide us with benefits for human life, then it is permissible. Although that specifically the Majelis Ulama Indonesia, MUI, just last year released a fatwa where the use of cryptocurrency as a legal currency is illegal because it contains garar and contradicts to some law. But actually cryptocurrency as an asset itself is allowed. Yeah. And I think Mr. Mufti Faras also explained about this previously. This slide shows various applications of blockchains in Islamic economy. So we can see here, we can see from 2 perspectives, financial sector and also non-financial sector. The application is really potential to use in many different ways, starting from payment system. As long as the payment system is free from riba, then blockchains will be beneficial for our life. Yeah? Capital market, banking and insurance for takaful and Islamic loans product. In social finance, now in Indonesia also growing. There are many Ziswaf organizations responsible for collecting fund from zakat, infak, and so on, and including crowdfunding. They start to using blockchain technology to improve the process. And then for non-financial sector, halal supply chain management is also very interesting right now. There are many different types of apps right now available and also being developed for halal tracking system. Crowdsourcing, where this is not only talking about fund, but sharing resource and then risks and profit sharing, facilities, human resource, and so on. It's also happening right now in Indonesia. And then digital identity and also other purposes. So it's not only limited to financial sector, educations, movie, politics sectors. It's also start to implement the blockchain technology, and it has potential on it. Okay. So I give you several examples of what are happening right now in Indonesia, although that I cannot put everything in here. So I'm just choosing 4 different examples to represent different types of business that now are using blockchain technology. So first is there is a company named Digital Arta Media Corporations, DEM. So this is a fintech enabler company with the support of technology resource and global reach. So they developed label blockchain solutions. So what they do in this case is they built electronic money system, and all the data in the electronic money system will be protected and cannot be accessed or modified from outside. So all sensitive data such as customer profiles and balance are safe and claimed to be anti-hack. So this is now it's the value added that company underlines on why finally now they developing the blockchain technology into their business. And then another example is Dompet Duafa. So I think Indonesian students really knows about this. Dompet Duafa, it's really well known in Indonesia. And they are one of these ISWAF organizations. They have a crowdfunding platform based on blockchain technology. Now they are developing this one. And they expect that by implementing blockchain technology, Muzaki, Munfik, or Wakif, they can track the flow of the data, management, distributions of donations. So it will be very, very open and also transparent, yeah? So that donators can track where the money goes and whether this is used, I mean, following the purpose, the original purpose or not. Yeah. And then this is possible doing this kind of thing because every transaction is transferred. So everything is automatically recorded in ledger technology, as I mentioned in the previous slide. Another example, one of the state-owned companies, Pos Indonesia, everybody knows about this, developing Digiro.in, where they are working for cross-currency or multi-currency to gold in the form of money. So what they do is they develop a platform that can use to manage assets, such as being used to buy gold, which will later be melted down at the post office, including land certificates can be stored in it. Another examples in the agriculture sector is Sharia and also Hara. These are also well-known agriculture companies in Indonesia. They adopt blockchain technology for halal tracing. They claim that with this technology, it will improve the efficiency of the process, transparent, and also accountability. So the halal label recorded will be easier to be tracked by the customers, including the historical record of the product value chains, where does the product's origins coming from, processing methods, the time, suppliers involved, and also other details, product description. So again, the data in blockchain technology is transparent, auditable, and also permanent so that consumers can ensure the validity of products, halal certifications, and also compliance. So although that blockchain technology provides benefits, as I mentioned earlier, somehow it still poses with some risks. But risks is not something that we need to be afraid of, because we simply need to have mitigations and also how to strategy to avoid the risks. There are three types of risks that many people are talking about related with the blockchain. So first is about environmental issue, where blockchain networks use a lot of electricity to validate transactions. So people think that it might be leading to environmental concern. But of course, there are some debate on it. People also think, some of them also think that if we are shifting into, let's say, renewable energy, and as long as in using the technology, we concern about sustainable energy, then I think, again, it is to minimize the risks related with environment. And then the second risk is about personal responsibility. If we know that there are some cases where people losing their assets somehow simply because they lose the code and lose the informations, there is no intermediary in this process, so everything is depend on the owner itself. So potential loss might be happening in here. It requires high personal responsibility. And then scalability tend to be small because with decentralized system, we can predict that whenever we want to grow the scale, it might resulting into inefficiency, slow response, and so on. But then again, innovations now it's still ongoing. So what I mentioned in here are risks that, of course, we can mitigate and also avoid. Yeah? Okay. And I think this is my last slide before we have questions and answer sessions. Then the next thing is what is important to be prepared, yeah, in order to make sure the blockchain technology implementation can be running well, especially in the context of Indonesia, yeah, specifically. So first, of course, testing and proving that the blockchain platform we offer can provide value added is the first things to do. This is to avoid confusions and also debate whether this is halal or not, because Islam is simple. It doesn't make us difficult to do something as long as it can provide value in our life. Yeah, it's everything's good and following the Sharia compliance. And whenever we develop platform that can fulfilling that rules, then it is something that worth it to do. Yeah. And once we prove that the platform or the innovations we do, it's okay, then the next step, of course, government needs to adjust regulations and also formulate rules and law enforcement. Yeah. Because, of course, there is some risks. Some participants wrote in the chat box about misuse, about money laundering, and many other things. Those are something we need to prevent. So by having a good regulations, I think that will be helpful. And of course, the third one is governance system. So this is the details is in here. When we have a strong governance, risk assessment, and also operational standardizations, so we can avoid market fragmentations and also preventing the negative effect of technology, yeah, like corruptions, misuse, and so on. But we need to remember that any kind of technology, not only blockchain, we always comes with benefit and risks. What we need to do is just mitigate it. So the final part is that to conclude my presentations, blockchain has a huge potential to be implemented in Islamic economy, as the use of blockchains offers possibilities for social impact, transparency, and then better supply chain management, provides personal data protections, legitimacy, and trust. Okay. But then what matters now are on how we need to develop mechanism, governance system, so that it's fulfilling with Islamic principles and provide benefits for human. Okay, I think that's all my presentations, Pak Yuda. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Bu Yuliani. And now we are going to the second part, will be the question and answer Q&A part. However, yeah, it's very interesting talk. Yeah, you mentioned that basically the Islamic economies can adopt blockchain technology, yeah, to improve or to use in the Islamic economy itself. And there's so many questions. I will start from one by one, yeah, Bu Yuliani. First from Ali. Islamic finance and its digital economy offer opportunities for Muslims and non-Muslims, as both populations now seek convergence solutions to their pressing issues, rebuild trust and confidence in a financial system that had lost them. Some technology imagine this world without intermediaries, yeah, so while others just want a faster and more efficient way of transactions. So the question is how blockchains and the potential of blockchain-based applications can change the Islamic finance industry. Perhaps you can share your opinion, Dr. Yulian.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pa Yuda. Yeah, in Indonesia itself, I agree that this is not only potential for Muslim market, but also non-Muslim market. But again, we have issue about trust. Yeah. So my personal opinion is that, of course, if we're looking from the business perspective, we need to prioritize market voice, yeah, voice of customer or VOC. So it can be case by case. My answer cannot be generalized, so it will be very depending on the company with their segment and target of the market, who will be the target segments on their business. And if you're talking about banking, for example, if they think that some people, the customers are mixing, some of them prefer to have intermediaries, some are not. So perhaps hybrid, as I mentioned earlier, it can be a good options for the company. But then again, the implementations might be different depending on the strategy of the company itself. Okay. So, but whenever we use open, close, or maybe the hybrid, again, it's depend on the market that we are discussing about. I think that's my personal opinion, Pak Yuda.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Bu Yuliani. So we go to the next questions. It's from Indra. Do you think blockchains can be used in open banking? If so, it's still the same with the finance industry. Yeah? Will banks transfer no longer require an intermediary, like switching institutions, or even a central banks such as a Bank Indonesia? If technically possible, how to mitigate the risks related to bank liquidity and also money laundering issues?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because even up to now, the applications of blockchain in banking in Indonesia specifically, it's still limited to the database system. So for example, like Bank Sentral Asia, BCA, now they implement blockchain technology, but still limited into operational activities, where it's kind of like advanced ERP, where the data collected partially will be decentralized using decentralized system, but some of them are still centralized system. So again, will it be possible to have open banking? It is debatable. Some of the experts that are very optimistic, they claim, well, why not? Yeah, as long as the market accept the idea. But the thing is that, again, the regulations and also mechanisms, now it's still blur. So how to mitigate the liquidity, then that's our homework actually. So without intermediaries, but if we can have layered process, somehow maybe in some part we can still need a validation process, even though we don't call that as intermediary. Perhaps it might be work, but perhaps I cannot give you clear answer about it, because it is also still under discussions. And even up to now in Indonesia, the best practice to have open banking has not yet come up. Yeah, still partial applications of blockchain in the operational aspect. Yeah, I think that's my answer, Pak Yudo. I hope it can clarify.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, great, sir. I think that's correct. Yeah. We go to the next part. While everything can be hacked, how well is blockchains or crypto foolproof? It's about the possibility can be hijacked or hacked by some persons. What do you think, Bu Yuliani?
Yeah, in blockchain, it's different with traditional centralized system where we store our data into one storage system. And in fact, with blockchain, because it's using decentralized system with thousands of members that can access the data and verify all transactions, so it will minimize the potential, the data to be hacked. So that's why minimizing risks to be hacked for the data. It's the benefits from blockchain technology. So although that it cannot eliminate like 100%, so that's why we can still see a few cases happening. Money laundering and then hack data, it's also happening worldwide, although that the number is not as much comparing to centralized system. Yeah. So I think that's my comment about that.
Okay, great. I'm agree. That's because cryptos, I think, they will minimize the risk of being hacked. Yeah, because it's very complicated technology, I think. Okay, for the next questions is from Ahmad Bayudin. Indonesian government is still not allowing about the cryptocurrency as a payments tools. How we deal with it if we want to adopt a blockchain for good things in Indonesia? Perhaps you can share your views.
Yeah, I know cryptocurrency is prohibited. It is haram in Indonesia, but as I mentioned, crypto assets, it's still allowed to be traded. Yeah. So it's only because in Indonesia, we only have one currency, rupiah. So others than that, it's not allowed. And how to adopt the blockchains? Of course, as I mentioned, there are a lot of possibility. In Indonesia now, the typical applications mostly related with the database system and then operation activities and also tracking system where, for example, like in halal supply chain in the agriculture that I mentioned, they will store all informations starting from where, let's say, the poultry product, where does the poultry products coming from, and then from which suppliers they are coming from, and then what will be the process, all actors involved in that poultry industry until the customers receive the final product. And that kind of system is adopting blockchain technology, because with the blockchain technology, all actors involved, they can access informations, including the customers. So I think the applications is not only limit to cryptocurrency or maybe Bitcoin. So there's only one example, but others than that, there are a lot of potentials.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Yuliani. I am agree also that it cannot be a broad applications for the blockchains. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, the problem is in Indonesia is only for the currency. It cannot be traded. I mean, cannot be used as a payment tools. Yeah, but we can buy it as an asset. Yeah, that's correct. Okay, so we have a question for Sashu Daryal Sutanto. Good afternoon. May I ask about what do you think about cryptocurrency that are highly promoted by the celebrities, because it's now still in hype? Are said to several projects on Metaverse and NFT, but are market towards people who don't really understand about the cryptocurrencies and how they works. Is it considered as illegals because the project promises that they hold, or is it is a plain illegal because of the how they are marketed? What do you think?
I think that question is similar with the previous one.
Yeah.
About cryptocurrency, that in Indonesia it's clear that it is prohibited and it's illegal. So no matter who are the artists to to promote because I mean, our perspective now, it's looking at this technology from the Islamic point of view, Islamic economy. So we cannot just get away from Sharia compliance in that case.
Agree. 100% agree, Bu Yuliani. Okay. So I think we still have some times to read some questions here from Ridzuan. What are, I don't know, there's a point to 2 point something. I think he asked, but I don't see the other part of the question. Yeah, but let's go for this question. What are the different on the policy formulation between conventional and Sharia application or use cases for it. I mean, yeah, for the blockchains to be adopted in a large scales. Is there any difference between Sharia and non-Sharia about the application blockchain in Indonesia?
Okay. So I think if we are talking about Sharia versus non-Sharia, it's quite clear. In financial sector, we are talking about prohibited of riba and so on that I already mentioned earlier. But specifically with the applications of blockchain, the difference is that with blockchain technology, we are tend to make the process more effective and efficient, and also improve the transparency by opening access to all the users. And how to improve the process, as I mentioned before, one of the keys to eliminate the intermediaries or mediators, for example. Although that again in Indonesia, it's still under discussions whether this is something that we can do or not. So the policy in here, we can imagine if we are now getting used to with traditional system with centralized, the data stored in one place. And then if we want to have transactions in a bank, we need to follow some administrative process. If the users using mobile banking, maybe now it's getting easier. Yeah, although that is just easier in terms of the fastening the process using the digital. But then in terms of the information sharing and so on about transparency, we cannot still use that with what we have right now. So the key is that when we dare to implement the blockchains to have open banking, again, the mechanism, the governance system, and also operational procedures needs to be designed very clear, and how to improve the trust and also transparency of the data, okay, so that it doesn't violate another thing other than Sharia, okay? But I mean, can protect the customers' needs and so on. But again, it's still something in a black box that we are have a homework right now to discuss about that. Yeah, Pak Yuda.
Yeah, agree. Thank you. And now, yeah, we still have time there. From Mr. Umar Aditya Warman, is a colleague from KNIKS.
Oh, Pak Umar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing, Prof, on halal supply chain domain based on your study. What will be the best strategy to implement blockchain? Since there's many checkpoints in the chain and blockchain tend to disrupt the incumbent technologies and business processes. Please share your
Yeah, this is
useful
a question very specific about halal supply chain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, according to my experience working with some colleagues, we are developing applications also, and also research about this with the blockchain technology. The main barrier in implementing this is on how to improve the engagement of all actors among the supply chains. Yeah? Because if you're talking about poultry, we are not only talking about farmer, yeah, but also how that we get the raw materials, and then the producers, yeah, slaughtering house, distributor center, and so on, until the customer can receive the final product. So the thing is that in developing the technology, as long as we have a strong IT team, it will be very feasible to do. But then to maintain the engagement of the actors, to update data and use the platform, that will be a challenge.
Challenges
up
and
to
also
now.
our homework, I think.
Yeah,
Agree.
that is from the industry point of view. Yeah, but then from the market point of view, the users, or let's say end of customers, especially in Indonesian context, how to educate them with this kind of platform with blockchain technology will be very beneficial to them. And it takes time and also efforts to develop a good socialization strategy to them, because blockchain, the terms is like scary for some people. And when they said when we said that, oh, this is applications that is different, we use blockchain on it, people getting like I mean, they can be hesitant and thinks that, oh, what is it? It's too difficult, it's too complex. And when they think that it is too complex and difficult, people might not think to use it. So it's very niche up to now. People that are well educated and knows about technology, they will be very easy to accept the concept. But then the other markets in Indonesia, majority or in the middle level and below low level. So that's one needs to have a good education program, I think. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Yuan. You cannot agree more with your statement. Okay, I think we are going to the last questions from Ferdian Ari. Ibu Yuliani, could you elaborate more about the areas of blockchains in the aspect of scalability? The blockchain solve the capacity issues of traditional database, isn't it? That's, I think, about the scalability of the blockchains. And there is it's try to solve about the capacity on the capacity issue the traditional database, but how about the scalability?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in short, scalability refers to the ability of the platform to capturing a lot of huge big data. Okay? Because as we know that in traditional, when I say traditional, it refers to the centralized system. We can just simply, how to call that? Intervene, yeah, whenever we need to upgrade the scale. Okay. But then in decentralized, when we open the system and sharing the data, we can imagine when it's multiply into, I mean, one person and then connect to another, or even finally becoming thousands users in the network, then the platform itself might be running slower. Yeah, and I think this is a very common risk that is happening in blockchain. But I also know that some of the innovators now are working on it to improve the scalability issue. Yeah, so this is something that is not dead end. This is just something that we identify as one risk, and then people now it's working to improve it. Yeah,
okay.
I think that's my comment, Pak Yuda.
Okay, thank you. I think this we have another question. I hope it's the last question, but
Yeah,
we have
yeah.
still have for about 4 minutes. Till now, what the most value added of blockchains in Islamic economics so far? Is it implementation for BC for Wakaf scheme? I mean, blockchain for Wakaf scheme. Okay, please share your
Yeah.
views.
Yeah, I mean, the general value added of blockchain, of course, as I mentioned earlier, that it can improve the efficiency of the process, transparency of the data, and so on. Blockchain for Wakaf scheme is just one example. I know that now, like Dompet Duafa and also other colleagues from other institutions also developing blockchain for Wakaf platform. Yeah, but that's only one example. Okay, so I think for Islamic economic, the key is that when we develop something with technology and it can provide good things in our life, yeah, it can be beneficial for us, everything becoming easier and then transparent, open, everything can be traced, especially if you're talking about halal supply chain, for example. If I want to buy a product, I know exactly where does it come from, and halal assurance is there. So that's example of value added from blockchain in Islamic economic. Yeah.
Great. That's great answer, I think. Yeah. Answering our last questions from Junev Ismailianto. I think that's the last questions and last sessions. And thank you very much for your sharing knowledge, Dr. Yuliani. It's very insightful, and also, yeah, give a very broad information about the blockchains on behalf of the committee from IBF Net and also from CIBF. We thank you for your presentations, and
thank you very much.
I
hope it is beneficial for everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that's the last session of the second sessions. And as already mentioned before, I will hand over to Brother Zahid. I will give you information how to take the token of appreciations. Please, Brother Zahid, time's yours.
Right, thank you so much, Prof. Dr. Ilyani, as well as Dr. Octofer for the session. All right, so alhamdulillah, this brings us to an end of today's webinar.
I think you are still muted, brother.
All right, thank you. All right, so this brings us to an end of today's webinar. We would like to thank all our students and viewers from across the world for tuning in today and for making this webinar quite interactive with your questions. We would, of course, like to thank our esteemed speakers for their time and for sharing so many insightful points. And we would also like to thank the team at ITB University for their constant support.